By decision of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, in connection with the approaching Orthodox holiday of Easter, a ceasefire is declared from 4 p.m. on April 11th until the end of the day on April 12th, 2026. Now, an urgent message from the Kremlin. By decision of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, in connection with the approaching Orthodox holiday of Easter, a ceasefire is declared from 4 p.m. on April 11th until the end of the day on April 12th, 2026. Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov and Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, Commander of the Joint Group of Forces, General of the Army Valery Gerasimov, have been instructed to cease hostilities in all directions for this period. Troops are to be prepared to counter any possible provocations by the enemy, as well as any aggressive actions. We assume that the Ukrainian side will follow the example of the Russian Federation. By decision of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, in connection with the approaching Orthodox holiday of Easter, the bright resurrection of Christ, a ceasefire is declared from 4 p.m. on April 11th until the end of the day on April 12th, 2026. Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov and Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, Commander of the Joint Group of Forces, General of the Army Valery Gerasimov, have been instructed to cease hostilities in all directions for this period. Troops are to be prepared to counter any possible provocations by the enemy, as well as any aggressive actions. We assume that the Ukrainian side will follow the example of the Russian Federation. As the fragile America-Iran ceasefire appeared to be cracking, Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev made a striking statement about Iran's regional leverage. Medvedev described the Strait of Hormuz as Iran's real nuclear weapon, portraying control of the waterway as a strategic deterrent with global economic consequences. In a post on X, Putin's advisor said Iran has effectively demonstrated its strategic leverage by repeatedly shutting the strait and disrupting global energy flows. A few hours later, Medvedev added, "Here it is. The Strait of Hormuz is closed again. The weapons are working," framing the closure as a visible test of Iran's coercive capabilities. Medvedev's comment came after Iranian media reported that the strait had been blockaded once more, reigniting shipment route concerns during the ceasefire window. This renewed closure took place shortly after Israel intensified its bombardment of Lebanon, which Iran has publicly called a violation of the broader truce framework. In his statement, the former Russian president also raised doubts about how the truce might unfold, suggesting it could be short-lived if underlying disputes remain unresolved. Less than 24 hours after the US announced a ceasefire with Iran, Iranian state media reported that the Strait of Hormuz had been shut down again, reversing a key condition of the truce. The complete and safe reopening of the strait was President Trump's stated condition for the two-week ceasefire, tying the pause in US strikes directly to the free passage of oil shipments. The stunning move came less than 24 hours after the US and Israel publicly backed the truce talks with Iran on March 7th to 8th, raising immediate questions about the deal's stability. The closure happened despite earlier indications that Iran would reopen the vital shipping route as part of the broader agreement, at least for the duration of the two-week pause. On the night of March 8th to 9th, Iran's press TV reported that an oil tanker was turned away near the strait, underscoring the tightening of maritime controls in the region. The tanker, named Aurora, made an abrupt 180-degree turn at sea and instead returned toward the Persian Gulf rather than continuing through the strait. The US government has stated that the Aurora is a sanctioned vessel, alleging it is used to transport Iranian oil outside the usual commercial channels. According to reports citing the semi-official Fars news agency, Iran's decision to close the strait was framed as a response to Israeli military operations in Lebanon, not solely to the ceasefire terms. Israel has intensified its strikes on Lebanon in recent days, saying it is targeting Hezbollah positions and infrastructure linked to Iranian support. Reports indicate that Israel launched around 100 suspected strikes on Lebanese territory within a 10-minute window on April 8, suggesting a concentrated, high-intensity campaign. These strikes in Lebanon have reportedly killed over 110 civilians and wounded more than 800 others, drawing sharp condemnation from humanitarian groups. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US Vice President J.D. Vance have both stated that the America-Iran truce does not apply to Lebanon. The situation has highlighted growing disparities between the sides over whether the ceasefire includes the Lebanon front or only applies to Iran directly. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US Vice President J.D. Vance have both stated that the America-Iran truce does not apply to Lebanon, treating Hezbollah as a separate conflict. In his public remarks, Netanyahu also warned that Israel could resume full-scale war with Iran at any moment in order to complete the original war goals.
I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states. Now, that said, the Israelis, as I understand it, again, I'm supposed to get a fuller report when I get on the plane, have actually offered to be, frankly, to check themselves a little bit in Lebanon because they want to make sure that our negotiation is successful.
Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said the United States must act on its commitments, including any understanding about the situation in Lebanon, if the broader truce is to be credible. At the same time, US President Trump has openly backed Israel's continued military actions in Lebanon, reiterating that Hezbollah was not included in the deal. Trump described the situation in Lebanon as a separate skirmish, downplaying its link to the wider Iran-US ceasefire even as attacks continue across the region.
We have more goals to complete, and we will achieve them either by an agreement or by renewing the fighting. We are prepared to return to fighting at any moment necessary. Our fingers on the trigger. A temporary 2-week ceasefire between the United States and Iran went into effect tonight, in full coordination with Israel. No, they did not surprise us at the last minute. Now I want to emphasize, this is not the end of the campaign. This is a stop on the way to achieving all our goals.